Ladies and gentlemen, nothing more better to do on a ranking show than two grown men talking about an animated franchise. Austin Pest, how you feeling, bud?
Yeah. Hey, man, but it's an animated franchise I started seeing when I was a kid, so that's okay. I think it counts. But yeah, no, I'm doing good, man. How are you? I'm ready to talk some Toy Story, man. Let's do it.
Yeah, this is one of the ones where it was just perfect timing because of relevancy with the release of Lightyear, but also
Hmm.
spoiler alert, I love this franchise. Regardless of how the
Hmm.
ranking's gonna go, they're all good movies. So
Yeah.
I'm no matter there's no saltiness in there. There's only five, and they're all short. I didn't have to rewatch any of them honestly because I had actually watched them all recently. And I'm confident in my ranking, and I know plenty of stuff to talk about with these films. So this is just it's a nice release. It's actually perfect timing because I've been doing a lot of studying for trivia, over the
Hmm.
last 2 weeks. So it's actually perfect time. I actually postponed me and John's horror podcast the last 2 weeks because I'm like I can't watch that shit right now. I gotta study. And spoiler alert, it paid off. But yes, I'm excited to talk about these. But so the only thing I'm interested in is just the general conversation with these because you're a little older than me.
Sure.
Toy Story 1 came out in 95. I was born in 93. And then
Hmm.
Toy Story 2 came out in 99. So I was 2 and 6 when the first two were out. So it's one of those where it's like I honestly don't really remember when I'd watched them. So like my just general past with animated films, like let's just put it this way. If I'd seen all the Disney Renaissance movies, I didn't remember them because I watched most of them as an
Hmm.
adult. And I still haven't seen all of them yet. And then obviously there's only, just a few of the Pixar movies, Toy Story, Toy Story 2, and Bugs Life in the 90s. So it's like one of those where it's like, all right, I don't remember when I'd seen them. My memory's like, oh, 2000. So, at that point. So they were out. And yeah, I don't necessarily think I grew up on them per se, but I love them as an adult. And that's actually the joy of having, a conversation
Hmm.
about these types of movies that we can talk about them as adults and rewatch them as adults and not just talk of them as
Hmm.
nostalgia films. That makes me happy. So yeah, do you have a similar history with it
Yeah.
or
So no, I have very vivid memories. I was born in '86. I'm a little older than Henry. So I was 9 when the first one came out. I have very vivid memories of seeing it in the theater with my family. So I have especially vivid memory because I had a headache that night, and they kept trying to make me take aspirin. I kept throwing it like under the seats and shit, and I wasn't taking it. So but I remember seeing the movie, enjoying the movie. We had it on VHS. The big box, Disney VHSs. I had it, definitely watched it a lot. Saw the second one in the theater as well. Had that one on VHS. So I watched the first two very, very frequently growing up. They were in the rotation. And then, yeah, I mean, I was fully grown by the time the third one rolled around in whatever it was 2010, I guess. And
yeah.
by then I was 24 years old. So I was kind of in a similar position. Not quite a little older than Andy in the movie, but in the movie, Andy in that one, is going off to college. He's older. I think a lot of the people that were in the audience that day for the third one, the day I saw it, were a similar age range as me, people who had grown up on the movies and who were now older. So that was interesting. Or people who maybe had kids of their own who saw this movie when they were kids,
Yeah.
which is a fascinating thing, seeing these movies. So, yeah, I've got a long history with this franchise. I did see the fourth one in the theaters, but I was about 3 or 4 weeks behind on it. I was just hesitant to see it. I thought the third one, and we'll get into it, was such a perfect finale that I was kind of hesitant to go into it. So I was kind of putting it off, but I did see that one, and then obviously saw Lightyear this past weekend. In the theater, so yeah, but I've got a long history going back to when I was a kid with this franchise, so maybe we'll come at it with those different perspectives, and that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that actually reminded me. I graduated in 2011, so I essentially was right around that time with Toy Story 3. So it's going to be interesting to see how that fits with the ranking. But yeah, I'm ready to get started. So
Sure.
five movies. We have the four Toy Stories as well as Lightyear. So I'm gonna get off started, and I'm gonna preface this where I like to love all five of these movies. So I don't have a negative thing to say about all five. But my number
Mhm.
5 is Lightyear, and honestly, I don't have a reason other than the fact that it's just I've been with the others long enough that they've just at that point, I've just earned the right to be the top 4, you know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily a knock on Lightyear. I actually had a blast, like, I really like this movie, like, it's a straight 4-star. I don't necessarily I don't think I'd call it a 5-star, or at least right now based on my gut, but like this was an awesome like sci-fi movie, and just a 1 second spoiler for Lightyear. The movie is the movie within like
Mm.
Andy's lifetime. So as soon as I got that, I was like, all right, let's just get a cool sci-fi flick, and that's what we got. All right, spoilers for that was over. But yeah, Chris Evans worked for me as Buzz Lightyear. I thought he did a fantastic job of talk just feeling not doing an impersonation of Tim Allen's Buzz Lightyear, but also being close enough that it's not weird. You know what I mean? Like their voices aren't similar, but like the inflections and the different like styles and of way he talks. Like he did a good job of just seeming like Buzz Lightyear, not like Tim Allen as Buzz Lightyear. So I didn't really have an issue with that. I really like the concept, the actual story of him being, you know, drawn to being a space ranger and like wanting to like be take his crew back because of just kind of and if you think of like Alien and stuff, like, oh, we got to go check out this, and you know what I mean, it's kind of just how it goes sometimes. And so it did a good job of like feeling like a sci-fi movie. And there was a couple scenes, like I saw this in IMAX, I don't know if you did, but when there's a couple scenes where it's actually doing some like warping stuff that felt like 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like it was beautiful to look, like the animation's great. Socks is a fantastic, just side character. I actually liked the relationship with Izzy, and I liked just how it did a good job of building up that relationship of, not necessarily being a father figure, but just being a male role model and just kind of building into that, and the relationship with her grandma, and how they were able to like really like add that emotional heart. I guess my thing is I didn't like technically cry. Like I felt like emotional because it did a good job like in the writing, but I didn't cry, so I couldn't like instinctively like bump it up above any of the other ones, because at some points I either cry or just have quote unquote nostalgia, but not like bad nostalgia, just like the good nostalgia for like the other four. So it's one of those where it's like, all right, I can't right now within the first week of putting Lightyear any higher, but that's not a knock on this movie for me personally. I really enjoy it, and I can see this in the rotation for a long time. Can you talk about it yet?
Yeah, because I have it at number 5, but I have a different score. I have this at a 2-star movie. I didn't really enjoy this movie that much. I think it's my proclivity of current family fare, current animated stuff. Just I feel like has lost a lot of magic that kind of early Pixar has, in some of these earlier movies. I was really into like the first 20 minutes of this movie, where it was just them getting like stranded on the planet, and then the stuff where he's doing the Interstellar Junior, where he's doing his test runs, and every time he comes back, it's like 4 or 5 years later, because the thing he's doing, and kind of that it was almost like an up montage, or where I was into all that stuff. I was into him and Socks, and then I was really ready for it to be like a Buzz and Socks movie doing space adventures. When they go to take off to do one more run, I was like, oh, okay, now they're going to bounce around the galaxy. He'll be a space ranger. They'll do all this stuff, and then they come right back and do the stuff with the Misfits, and I was just not interested in that stuff at all. I started to check out. I fell asleep at one point for like at least 10 or 15 minutes, even though I saw the first showing of the day at 11 o'clock and had slept 10 hours the night before. This movie put me to sleep. I was just not interested in the sort of Mission Impossible stuff, in the middle of this movie. I didn't think it was particularly interesting. The crew with Taika Waititi and all them just didn't work for me. It was like gag, 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 joke, 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 and just there was no character progression there at all with any of them. It was just they could just kind of stumble into everything. There was no thing of like, oh, well, now we're gonna mature and do this. It was like they're the same characters in the end they were in the first. I thought Chris Evans was fine as Lightyear. It was awkward that it wasn't Tim Allen, but I could get over that. That's fine. But I this conceit of this being like Andy's favorite movie is weird to me, because I couldn't see a kid really getting into this movie like super hardcore like that. And it also creates a weird thing where he would definitely be more into Socks than Buzz Lightyear as a character. And the fact there's no Socks in those early Toy Story movies is a little strange now when you go back and watch this, because Socks would have been a marketing phenomenon. I wasn't really into it that much. I don't see myself ever going back to it. It's not a horrible movie. It looks great. Some of the score was good. Again, I liked the first 20-25 minutes a lot, and the rest of it just didn't work for me too much. So I have it at 5 as well, but I'm more in non-positive territory. From here on out, it's more positive, but this one just didn't work for me.
That's
So
actually interesting. I watched last night's episode of Logged It, and one of the panelists had a similar
Yeah.
opinion, and I just didn't, agree. It was one of those where Tim Bercala, he loves the movie, so when he was like kind of not necessarily defending it, but just like giving his side, and essentially it was the same. It's like I was the Tim in this situation, and you were, I don't remember
Mhm.
who it was. I don't remember. I think it was Garth, but it was one of those ones where it's like, or Kirk, one of the two. But it was like, yeah, they were the exact. And I honestly, I feel like that's just maybe the older vibe. That you just kind of like, I'm not saying like you're an old man or nothing like that, but like anything with the
I'll
new animated just doesn't hit.
say this because I also watched Soul for the first time this year, another Pixar movie, and I did not enjoy Soul either. So maybe I'm just getting to be crotchety old man, and I can't
Yeah.
get into these Pixar movies anymore. I just don't think they have the same magic. But it's funny because then we'll talk about it when I went and rewatched parts 2, 3, and 4 for this. I'll say because the first one I've seen 8 billion times. I did not need to see that one again. I had not revisited the sequels in a little while. I'm still very familiar with them, but I hadn't revisited them in a while. They still got me and still hooked me. So like yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just that connection
Maybe
I have with
Woody.
them, and yeah, these characters that I'm just ingrained in them, and it's harder for me to connect with newer characters at my age. When it comes to animated or Pixar stuff. But yeah, Soul didn't work for me either. So I don't know. That's on a whole different thing. Me and Jacob talked about that on a podcast about movies. It was one of the ones that I watched on his list. So it is what it is. I wasn't really into Lightyear, but it's not a knock on anybody who enjoys it. I get why people would enjoy it. The kids in the audience seem to have a good time in the screening I saw. So it's probably just me, and then not necessarily a knock on the movie itself. So
That's fair.
yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead and let you set the tempo with your number four.
So my number 4 is Toy Story 4, and it's in like 3-star territory for me. It's positive, but it's only because my other three, the original three, are all 5-star classics for me, like 5-star bangers. So Toy Story 4, again, I came out of that original screening. Again, I enjoyed it for what it was, but I can't. My overall feeling is that this movie is a really nice epilogue, but it feels like completely almost disjointed from the other trilogy. It doesn't really feel like a true sequel. It just feels like an addendum, and one that doesn't feel necessary that I needed, especially after the way the third one ends. I'm fine, and I was fine when the lead up of the movie being like, hey, if we check in on these characters every now and then with like a short film that they were attaching to some movies at the beginning, a little 10-minute mini adventure. I'm cool with that. Seeing what they're up to, cool. This one for me just feels kind of empty. Like I don't connect with a lot of the stuff. Again, it's entertaining. I like a lot of the stuff with Forky, like the first 20, 25 minutes. Again, with this one, is like really fun. And Forky's kind of existential crisis of I'm just trash. And I love the montage where he keeps trying to run to the trash can. It's actually
Yeah.
one of my favorite montages in the whole series. It just makes me giggle. Like I thought that was really, really funny. Just trash, trash, trash. And he keeps trying to run to the trash can. That stuff's fun. And, Woody kind of taking him under his wing and explaining, kind of how toys work, almost like a Buzz situation, but in a more nurturing kind of way. I like the dynamic they have with Bonnie's toys is fun. It's just the actual adventure to me feels like they're just kind of going through the motions, and it's a lot of the stuff we've already seen. The Gabby character is not particularly interesting to me. The fact that she just wants this voice box to impress a girl is like, okay. I mean, I don't I just think she's a lesser villain or a villainous character in the series. And again, a lot of this stuff just seems like retreads of adventures we already had and ones that I didn't really need. The last 10 minutes is very good. Of them Woody kind of coming to the realization that he's okay being off on his own and finally breaking free of this family structure, and the way that they all part ways with each other is done very well. So again, it's serviceable, it's entertaining, it's good, but it just lacks that punch for me, like the stories in the other three have for me. It just doesn't quite hit those same highs, those same levels. And in this case, I don't think it's my age. I think the movie itself just again feels like an epilogue, and I just feel like it's wholly unnecessary. So that's me. I'm positive on the movie, but I don't see myself going back to it. Still going back like I do with these other ones. So yeah, my number 4 is number 4, appropriately enough.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah,
Um, I'll go to my number four. My number four is, at this point now that we're talking about the four Toy Story movies. There's you're kind of like, drawing straws essentially, depending on any given
Yeah.
day of what you're gonna, connect to. At least for me personally, because I'm higher up on, all four as a whole. But so my number four is Toy Story 3. And
Hmm.
this is like borderline. Like if I did 4.5, so it's probably be a 4.5, but it's a 4 star. And the reason that this is a 4 star, the difference is like honestly, I don't really have any emotional like moments in it. Like the incinerator scene, it never really did it for me because I'm like, especially at that age when I saw it, I'm like, I know that they're not gonna die. You know what I mean? So it's like it's emotional. You know, what I mean, it's I get more emotional on the other stuff of just like the actual characters versus like the stakes. So I feel like that just didn't get it for me. And I like Lotso hugging bear, but so don't get me wrong, Lotso, Prospector Pete, and Gabby Gabby, they all have like generally speaking similar motives with their own little
Hmm.
twist. And I think of the three, Lotso just doesn't he does it for me like the least of the three, like if I'm ranking those
Hmm.
three. And it's like the reason that it doesn't is just because he's more like a crime boss, and I feel like that's a cool twist on it. So it's like I don't like have anything negative to it, but I don't connect to it as emotionally as a character. Like I liked his story, like with everything, him and the baby, and like him on the front, like towards the end, like in the comeuppance and all that stuff. Like I liked like where how it like resolved and like that, but it just I don't know, it just didn't do it as much because there's something about I guess maybe the fact that he's a bear versus like the other animals or the other like characters are more like humanistic in a way. So I don't know, just but anyway, so everything at what is it, Sunnyside, right? That's the name of the daycare
Sunnyside
center.
Daycare. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
everything at Sunnyside, like it's a lot of fun. Like it feels like a spy movie, and it feels like an action movie, and it's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, like like I said, I don't really have anything negative to say about it, but like when I think of animated films as a grown man right now, and like why I love the ones I love, like I'm just gonna throw it out there. I don't really rewatch animated films like often. Like I maybe watch like 2 or 3 a year if it has
Hmm.
nothing to do with some sort of trivia or debate. So like Coco's in my top 10 of all time, but because like what it does to me. How to Train Your Dragon movies are like up there because of like when I watch them, they're like fun adventure action movies with that, boy and a dog, vibe to it. The Toy Story movies do it for me because of just like, the camaraderie. And I feel like they're like separated in the, or like, what I mean, there's something missing in terms of just like the overall vibe that I don't know. I'd never really known, you know what I mean? Because I know a lot of people like love it, and I feel like it is that incinerator scene. That's what really hits, and it didn't really hit for me because it's like, all right, I know, they're gonna be okay. So like the final send off, honestly, what I really think it is, it's like we never technically get Andy as like a character that much. So like the emotionalness is like letting go of your toys, but like we never get like Andy's POV hardly ever in the entire franchise. So I don't
It's
feel like
not about that final scene's not about Andy though. I'll talk more about it when I talk about it. But the final scene's not
well,
about Andy letting go.
and I and
It's
I
it's
and
about, it's about Woody letting go.
Yeah,
It's not
and
about.
I think and for me, I think it's done better in 4, which is what I'll talk about later. And I feel like that's the difference because we're getting it essentially from Andy's POV, but it just doesn't, or it's a combination. Like I'll say it's split down the middle even, but it's like since you're not getting that Andy-ness to it, it just doesn't hit as hard. So yeah, it doesn't, like I said, I'm just giving nitpicks of like why I have the rankings there. But yeah, it's a fun movie. I really like it. Like you said, no real negatives. But if I'm grasping at straws of like why my rankings that way, that's why. So Toy Story 3 is my 4.
Oh, interesting. Well, I'll talk about it a lot later. Definitely. So, yeah, my number three is the original Toy Story. And again, this is just whichever ones just really have that emotional connection for me is kind of how I had to rank them because they're all very good quality, movies as far as the original trilogy goes. Like I said, these are all like 5 star, classic territory. I can pick up and watch one of these pretty much anytime. Really, it's more technical stuff. You go back and watch the original, and just the people look weird. Some of the computer animation is just a little primitive. I was watching them all on my 4K TV, and it's just they made such a jump from Toy Story 1 to Toy Story 2, and the quality of the animation just in those 4 years. That that's the one thing that just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb in that one. Is just things just look kind of weird. Sid is an interesting villain, but I think he's kind of cookie cutter because he's just a kid that plays with his toys differently. So he's while he's destructive, I kind of get it, but he's also like this surgeon, but he also doesn't know that the toys can feel that and are alive or whatever, and obviously until they come alive. But yeah, it's still a good movie. I like the dynamic of Buzz. Buzz is kind of at his best when he thinks he's real, so to speak, when he thinks when he thinks he's Space Ranger, because they kind of go back to that in different aspects, both in the second and third one. In the second one with the one they find, that kind of tags along with the toy store, and then the third one when they kind of reset, Buzz, Spanish mode, and when they do the demo mode, all that kind of stuff. Like Buzz is kind of at his best when he thinks he's a Space Ranger. You obviously get a lot of that here. The sequences are all good. I really don't have any nitpick bad things to say. It's an amazing film. I've loved it ever since the original. Just to me, it doesn't have any of those sequences that really cut to a core and really make me think about existential stuff in this movie. Because I think they just hadn't figured out what they had yet at the time. And they were just able to explore those characters better in some of the sequels. And just kind of dig a little deeper. So, the original one, I don't really have any qualms about it. It's my number 3, and it's an amazing film. I just really click and add on to stuff in the sequels a little more. So, yeah, that's really it. But it's a great movie all around.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that was like my description with 3. It's like you feel guilty because it's like you have to kind of justify your ranking.
Well, you gotta rank them at some point. Somehow it might just come down to those little sequences or those character beats or whatever. That the things are really
and our defense mechanisms, like, oh, I'm like knocking it, but I'm really not. You're just justifying, what separates it. So my number 3 is going to be Toy Story 2.
Okay.
And the difference with Toy Story 2 and 3 is the Jessie scene. The Jessie scene just all day long.
Fucking devastating. That's the West McLaughlin. My God, it's the worst.
Every time I go and rewatch this film, I'm like, all right, as a whole, it's not top 2, obviously. But that Jessie scene is always the first thing I think of, as I'm going, as I'm ranking things, or as I'm just thinking about either Toy Story as a whole, Pixar as a studio, animated films, my favorite movies of all time. Now we're 5 stars. So my 1, 2, and 3 are all 5 stars. So the difference with this one is it's a similar vibe of 3, where it's just kind of that all right, they're separated. Let's get the gang back together. It doesn't have overall that connectivity all right. So what number 1 has that 2 is missing is just that pure, just full on magic, lightning in a bottle. Like, hey, you got a friend in me, all that type of stuff. So it's missing that, not like in a negative way. Once again, it's going to be pedantic every time we just have to talk about that. But when I watch the 1 and 2 back to back, I just have a pure smile on my face with 1, whereas in 2, I have I'm watching a film for most of it, and then I'm breaking down during the justice scene, and then I'm feeling sorry for Prosecutor Pete, and then then I'm like, oh no, he turned on us, and then it's but I get it, you know what I mean? And then Woody's Roundup is cool, Bullseye's adorable, you know what I mean? It's there's so much things there where it's just yeah, I love it all, it's great, and but it's one of those ones because of the journey is less interesting, I guess, in comparison, because of the uniqueness at this point. It's similar vibes. You're all the stories, there's a template, and it puts its own twist on it for that specific story. And I feel like this is the best of but out of the 2 and 3. But yeah, it's one of those ones where like I said, we're grasping at straws here. The Toy Story franchise is fantastic. The dynamic that we get with Jessie when we introduce her, you got Woody and oh my God, I literally just said it. the horse. Wow, it's
Bullseye.
Yeah, I literally just said it. That's sometimes that's how the brain works. But yeah, so with Bullseye, and then getting figuring out Buzz's involvement into the crew, and then you got Ham and all that stuff, in Rex, every all the characters are just on firing on cylinders. I mean, it's an ensemble for a reason. When you think of the Toy Story, you don't just think of Buzz and Woody, you think of the entire crew. You know what I mean? And that's because what they put together is great. And yeah, so that's my number 3. But at this point, we're talking about my 5 stars, so it's not,
Oh yeah,
it is.
no, it's the same with me. It's just like the little points that put the one over the other. You know what I mean? Just like the little sequences. But funny you should mention Toy Story 2. It's my number 2, so I'll talk about it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, Toy Story 2 is I think it's just a sequel to me that improves on almost everything in the original. The character beats are just stronger. I think the movie's funnier than the original. It hits all those comedic beats really well. They're each having their own adventures where they have to come back. But I like both of them. It's one of those things where some movies, they're doing the two dueling storylines, and like maybe you like one more than the other, so you're kind of waiting to get back to the other one. But this one, I think they're both interesting because I like seeing the toys kind of make their way to Al's toy barn, and the sequence where they have to cross the highway is a lot of fun, and the cones and all the cars are crashing all over the place. Like that's really fun. All the stuff where they're interacting with, the other Buzz and the Barbie dolls are really great in the toy barn. Like that stuff's fun. And then when they wake up, Emperor Zurg and he's chasing after them, destroy Buzz Lightyear, destroy Buzz, it's just, all that stuff is fun. And Rex, at the same time, he's reading the strategy guide, and, he gets the little kill on Zurg at the end, and, they do the whole father and son thing. Like, it's a nice little button, on that little.
Whenever you see that scene of Rex doing that, do you think of Jurassic Park? I'm a hacker. And it's just kind of like, all right, I can do this, my moment.
No, he's like, I know how to defeat Zurg. No, it's great. It's excellent. I like the little Jurassic Park nod they do when he's chasing after the car and does like the little rearview mirror thing. Like that's fun. It's an obvious joke, but it's a lot of fun. I think Wayne Knight as Al is like a lot of fun. I mean, they modeled the character even just after him as the real guy. Again, he's not a total villain except for the fact that he steals Woody. Like that's the villainous thing, is he like stole Woody, out of the lockbox. But he's a collector trying to put this collection together, and you can see he's like a kid at heart who loved this old show, and he's got like this whole mantle essentially laid out to it. And then you see Stinky Pete's perspective. He's never been played with, he's never had that connection, but he wants to be admired, he wants to be respected. He's the third guy on the show, he's the little sidekick, and he wants that respect, and that's what he's going to get out of the museum thing. So he's all for it. But again, you see he's not totally villainous other than just stopping Woody from running away. But
once he puts him in the box, at that point, that's the one where he's like, all right, I got to put my foot down, and I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah, he goes full on villain. He's like, no, I'm not going to let you like stop my dream of going to this museum and being admired.
Kelsey Grammer does a great job of just like embodying that. Like he flips it off. He goes from like being like the lovable Frasier to Beast, essentially.
And he goes full on. All the Jesse stuff. Yeah, the Sarah McLachlan montage is absolutely devastating. It gets me to well up like every time. It's just so well done. And you see her perspective. She doesn't want to get attached to a kid again because she doesn't want to get her heart broken again. So you totally understand. Some of the best movies are where you can understand where each perspective is. You understand each one, and the drama playing out it's great drama. It's done really well. That's where Pixar shines, is hitting those dramatic beats. But even the action beats are good. Like I said, I like the chases, I like the rescues. They're all good. All the comedic stuff is really solid. It's a really, really good sequel, and it's like one that I'll put on usually this one over the original one, just if I'm putting on kind of one or the other situation, just because I think it's got a great pace, and I like everything that's going on, and then they dig more into that human, existential stuff in this one. So I like Toy Story 2 a lot. It's always been a big favorite of mine. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, I love when you were talking about how you don't fully consider Pete as like a villain, and like that's why I call him Prospect Pete. I'm like I give him a little respect.
Yeah.
I don't think of him as, I don't want to call him Stinky all the time. It's rough.
Like, well, that's why kids don't want to play with him. You don't want to play with a stinky toy, like
exactly. You know what I mean? And like in my mind, I'm like, all right, I'm thinking about the first 2/3, so it's all good. But that's just a lot of fun. Where it's like, as soon as I don't know why when it clicked when you said that, I'm like, yeah, that's my opinion. You know what I mean? That's just where I go.
Yeah.
So my number.
Even in a second, when I'll talk about Lotso, like he's in a similar thing. He's a broken character. He's not necessarily he's a villainous nature, but it's because he's broken. So like I'll talk about that. But like it's interesting watching it as an adult. So yeah.
And I honestly, for me, like I said, I think it's just too repetitive. So if I'm pick grasping at straws, it's like, all right, at this point, let's mix up a little bit, and that's the only reason. But anyway, so my number 2 is Toy Story 4. And the reason that this one works for me is because how you probably are going to explain how you feel Toy Story 3 is how I felt at the end of Toy Story 4. Because Woody is my guy. And I felt like this one explored his. So in Toy Story 3, even the end of him going to Bonnie, it's one of those where he's like, all right, essentially just do what you got to do. This is just, it is what it is. That's just, I kind of don't really have a choice. That's how I like interpret it. Whereas in 4, I really feel like it was him like walking off into the sunset, like a Western. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, this is the end. Like he finally made that decision. You know what I mean? I feel like his relationship with Bo Peep and how they reconnected and how she was able to adapt and grow. And a lot of people make I don't know if it's a criticism because of like the time period, 2019 with everything, but like her becoming, a badass. But it's like that's fine with me. Like, guess what? Two of my favorite, or three of my favorite, female characters of all time, Ellen Ripley, Sarah Connor, and Beatrix Kiddo.
All
You know
that
what I mean?
shit. Yeah.
I as soon as Bo Peep was, a badass and kicking the shit out of people with her little cane, I'm like, yeah, please. You know what I mean? Like I was all for, like that didn't bother me at all. And I'm usually on the opposite in terms of those things where it's like, oh yeah, you're just no, this one worked for me. So their connection out, they're able to connect, and it's like, no, we don't need a human. You know what I mean? Because it's like in this universe, they are real. You know what I mean? They have, they're entities, they have their own minds. So like it really clicked in that where it's like, all right, you don't need to be attached. Because even in 3, he was like, I need Bonnie, and that's what happened at the beginning of 4. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I need Bonnie, and he's like not the guy anymore. And then when you get Forky, it's one of those where it's just the fun, Pixar thing where it's like a new side character, but like it's a good metaphor of like he's like, oh, I don't want to be a toy. I'm just a made up bullshit. You know what I mean? Because kids nowadays, they don't really care about, what their toys. They just want to play. They latch on to just whatever they want to. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those things where, but Woody is just so persistent in getting to Bonnie's heart however he can, even if it means picking another toy that will make her happy. You know what I mean? And by the end, he's like, it's not even about Bonnie anymore. It's about me and like how I'm, an individual. And I really, love that. So like when Buzz like, come on, he's like, no, I'm gonna stay. And it's like that. I don't know why it just hits me super hard because I just love the concept of just like identity and just coming into your own circle and your own personality and just being one. And it really, that's like I said, that's what separates this versus 3 of just that emotional like, dude, fuck, you know what I mean, the ending. Because 3, like I said, that ending emotionally wise, at least with the incinerator, you start there because of the danger and that didn't really hit. And then 3, because I don't have like, even though, so when I think of Andy as a character, it's more of like a POV, a copy paste, like, all right, here's with, me. So it's like when I think of that, but now as a grown man, it doesn't hit as hard because like, obviously I'm separate from, I'm distant from when I played with toys. Like I was a wrestling guy anyway. So it doesn't have that same vibe. You know what I mean? I didn't sleep with my wrestlers. I'm more like, banging them together and, putting red marker on their face for blood and stuff like that. You know what I mean? That was my vibe. So it just, I don't have that type of emotional connection to them, so I'm actually connecting to them as like individual characters. And obviously that's why one's my favorite because like that's 100%, they're just individual characters, just you kind of building up what they're doing. So in 4, how it comes full circle, and it's one of those where you meet the new characters. I don't remember what they're called. Key and Peele's characters, where they're just once again,
it's like Tucky and something. Yeah,
Tucky, yeah,
just call them the plushies because their thing is the plush rush. So they're just the plushies.
And it's just one of those where it's like it's so unnecessary and stupid, but because they're unique. They're just like doing their thing and they're having fun. It's all good. And so, and now I want to touch on Gabby, where it's like what separates her is not that she was thrown away because she was, moved on from, which that trope's, been done enough now because kids, go on to their own toys. And obviously I said the thing, they started that with Forky and Woody. The reason she isn't love is because she's broken. And I like that metaphor. It's like she can't do what makes her, what makes her useful. and her identity is literally her voice box. So like she doesn't have anything else, because that's why you buy that toy, is for the voice box. So without that, she is useless. And that's the one that's like the first time that's that's happened. You know what I mean? Whereas like Stinky Pete, they have to be a band, so they have to be all as one. So you get that, and then Lotso is just more of his beef essentially with being abandoned, which once again we have that with Jesse. So it's kind of like a little bit repetitive. There was this one. This is the first time of being the broken toy, and it just like your identity. And like I feel like 4 did a great job of just telling a story about identity, and doing it through toys is so interesting that it worked, at least for me. And a lot, I would say not a lot of people, but a decent amount of people. It's one of the ones where it's like the people that latch on to 4 latch on, and the ones that not is more of like unnecessary but good, which is kind of essentially what you said. Or like
That's what I
not
said.
necessarily, yeah, you know what I mean.
Mhm.
So and it's like I get that, like it's fine, like I because my criticisms of 2 and 3 on a high levels, just nitpick criticism, is the repetitiveness. So the fact that this one has a similar repetitiveness as one, I connect to the emotional level. So it's like I feel like that's as grown adults, especially both of us without kids, we have to figure out, we have to uniquely latch on to whatever we're going to, and then this is the one that did it for me. And yeah, so Toy Story 4 is my number 2, and this is one of the ones from day one. I've rewatched this a few times, and every time, like the one of the times I watched it with my roommate and her daughter's autistic, so sometimes
Mhm.
her attention span's not the greatest. So like I'm dealing with her not paying attention the entire time, but I'm like locked in, and especially by the end, it's one of those ones where if you have an emotional payoff, but you haven't kind of been paying, attention the entire time, sometimes it doesn't hit you as hard that viewing. Still, like it's like I could probably just watch, a YouTube clip or just fast forward to that end scene, and still like it's just one of those where it's like it got me. You know what I mean? That's just I'm all in. So like if I was an animated guy, like in terms of like my overall taste, other than my heritage with Coco, that's why that's obviously always going to be up there. But like in general, like every time I'm thinking like my top 100, like animated always just get pushed down, pushed down, pushed down. But in
Yeah.
theory, if I was an animated guy, like this would be in there. You know what I mean? Because of how I do feel about it. So yeah, Toy Story 4 is my number 2.
Yeah, no, and but that's the way I feel about Toy Story 3, which is my number one, because even seeing it for the first time at 24, and I'm 36 now. I'll just get it out of the way, Henry. I was finishing up this movie on my lunch break yesterday on Disney Plus on my phone in my car, and I was welling up and damn near ugly crying in the last 5 minutes of
Yeah,
this movie in my car on my lunch break, and it was so embarrassing. But I was like, oh my god, this movie still works. Like, why can't I get through the scene? Like, it's horrible, but like it's horribly amazing. For an animated movie to do that is something, because I don't cry a lot of movies, but like this movie gets me. And yeah, it's not so much the incinerator scene. Like, it's really not that, because I know they're going to get out of it somehow. The way they get out of it is one of the best payoffs ever, because it's the claw, like, and it's the
oh yeah,
those scenes, like that's a great payoff. Basically a 3 movie payoff.
that's
So
more of
like I
a
love that
just
as a, yeah, like, all right, the claw, like, yeah, hell yeah, like those little characters getting their moment, like that's awesome. It's the stuff, it's everything leading up to it, from I just think everything in this movie works, like from the opening scene recreating the original opening of Toy Story, but like from the toys perspective, the way it looks visually with the train sequence, like all that stuff, just is
that is
gorgeous.
awesome.
It's insane. Like, dude, I had this on 4K and it looks amazing. Like, it's like reference level stuff. It's incredible. So you start out with that. This whole thing about them going into the attic. Kind of a purgatory thing, but Woody's being torn because he's getting pulled to college in the other box, so he's still going to be with Andy, and his kind of back and forth with them. I think that's a good little thing. All the Sunnyside stuff is interesting, because it has the false setup of like, oh, this seems like a cool place, kind of like a retirement home, but like not bad. And Lotso, he's a broken character because he turned on humanity. He feels like nobody can enjoy, humanity. He's taking that from other people as well. So I think it's different than Stinky Pete, because his is, a more condensed thing of just like, I'm going to keep this group together because it's going to be my fame and fortune and my thing, But like Lotso is broken so psychologically that he can't allow anybody to even remotely have fun. He can't
That's
allow
why that's
anybody.
why I had that crime boss vibe to it, where it's like, you know what
Yeah,
I mean, or
he's like
even someone like
dictator.
the Joker. You know what I mean? Where it's
Yeah.
like you get put to that point, and at that point, you know what I mean? So yeah, I just wanted to
I think it's different enough. Like from Pete, I think Pete is more condensed. Lotso is more on just this giant power trip and this grudge against humanity in general. Where I don't think Pete has this grudge against all of humanity. I think he just he's just resentful that he never had a childhood. Essentially, he never got played with. He's been in the box his whole life, so he just doesn't even know that feeling. Lotso had that feeling, but it was taken from him. I think that's the difference between him and Pete, which is what I like at the core of his character. So, but I like that stuff. I love the performance of Ned Beatty. I think he's got that nice, like, elderly statesmanship, and then when he turns it on, he can definitely like turn it on. Yeah, the whole prison break sequence is excellent. I think it's one of the best prison
sandbox.
break sequences ever put to thing. Yeah, there's Cool Hand Luke references in this movie. The whole thing
Yeah.
when Buzz gets reset and he's doing the whole anybody who's caught outside spends the night in the box. That's a whole Cool Hand Luke sequence, and I love Cool Hand Luke. It's in my top 64. So I like that immediately when I saw the movie originally. I was like, oh, I love Cool Hand Luke, yay! Like that's great. Nobody's gonna get this except me. Like I
We're
felt
in
like
the
it was
box,
just for me.
boss. In the box,
Yeah,
boss.
yeah. Anybody spends the night in the box. Yeah, that's great. All that stuff is awesome. But yeah, even the little details throughout the whole thing. I love the monkey that watches the cameras, like all that stuff is great. Mr. Potato Head having to do the tortilla and the cucumber stuff, like it's almost like the Pickle Rick stuff in Rick and Morty, kind of before
Right.
that. Yeah, so like they did it way before Pickle Rick, so that was cool. And I almost forgotten about that stuff. That stuff is great. Yeah, the whole sequence is awesome. I like the Bonnie character, and the way she plays with toys is different than
Definitely
Andy,
adorable, yeah.
and she does a different thing. And I think Woody gets a taste of that and kind of realizes it's not Andy, but it's something, and he feels more protective of Bonnie than Andy. Andy can take care of himself, and he's more protective of Bonnie. Which we see kind of more in the fourth movie. But yeah, just the whole sequence, everything that leads up to that final 10 minutes. It's not all about the final 10 minutes, but it's done better than so many other movies that try to do like a wrap up, where it's just the whole build up to it. You kind of know what's coming, just the slow thing where he writes the note and you're not sure what it is. And then you remember about Bonnie and they get to Bonnie's house and Andy takes that beat to just watch her and see like her playing with the toys. And it's such great visual acting for a movie where there's not physical people in it. It's
Yeah.
just, they take these beats of like the eyes and like the way that Pixar's able to do that and convey that, and he walks up and there's the hesitancy and he's introducing the toys, as he's kind of saying goodbye to them. They have one last playtime, and it's Woody because Woody gets in the box. He was in the college box. He gets into that box, for him saying goodbye, him moving on. And it's so much where he's like, him realizing that again, it's not so much about Andy, it's about we're there for whoever needs us. And at this point now it's going to be Bonnie that needs us. Like it goes back to that first movie of like, you're a toy and our job is to be there for Andy. Now our job is to be there for Bonnie. And he has to let go and, realize that Andy has moved on. It's the cycle of life. He's accepting that and he's moving on, and now he's going to turn his attention to Bonnie, no matter what that may be. But them having their final playtime is like really great. And just moving on. It's just so well done. It's so well done. And like I said, I was like ugly welling up in my car, just watching it. It's just such a great payoff for somebody like me. And again, that may be my attachment, to the original movie that I didn't realize when I saw it in the theater that I could have that attachment to like a little, kids movie, these toy characters, going all the way back to 95, seeing it in the theater and then watching it on VHS over and over again. It just hits me in the feels, man. And I think they did it so well. They could have screwed it up so bad, but they didn't. They just hit it, on every point, and just great character beats throughout the movie. Great comedy. Spanish Buzz is really funny. Like I love Spanish Buzz. As a character development, like all that stuff is a lot of fun. And yeah,
What are your
and the
thoughts
little
on Barbie and Ken doll?
oh, Barbie and Ken's awesome. I love the Barbie and Ken doll. Michael Keaton is the Ken doll. I think one of my funniest like times I laughed out
Beach
loud the
house.
most is when she's she's kind of tied to the thing, and she's torturing him by like tearing up his clothes, and he's just the noises he's making. Oh, not the 1967 collection. Oh God. Oh Jesus. Oh God. Like it's just great comedic timing because Michael Keaton's awesome, and he knows how to hit those comedic, just little beats. Yeah, their dynamic is a lot of fun. I like that Barbie's not stupid. Like she's a smart character, and she like sets him up through the whole thing.
Michael
Yeah, they're
Keaton had a
great.
good comedic 2010.
Oh yeah, it was good. Yeah, that and other guys, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
great comeback. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, all the little characters throughout the thing, I like. Yeah, I almost forgot about the Barbie Ken stuff because it's so good. Everything's so good. I almost forget about the other good stuff. But yeah,
And then the
it's all
creepiness
great.
of Baby and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Where it's like there's so many side characters. It's actually a lot going on.
Yeah, even the little phone guy that they have to break later, to kind of like torture him, but they don't show that. They just, they finally broke me, like that stuff, is rough, when they finally break him. And yeah, just the whole dynamic of the butterfly room and the caterpillar room, like all that stuff is really good, really good dramatic stuff. So, yeah, I just think this movie hits on all cylinders. It really played for me this last time when I rewatched it, and I just think it's about as close to a perfect movie as you can get. So I think Toy Story 3 is a masterpiece of filmmaking. So
There you
yeah,
go.
it's my number
And
one.
that makes me
Yeah,
happy that that you
yeah.
feel that way. And it's one of those where it's like I'm not necessarily jealous that I don't feel that way, but it's just like I have my own that I connect to it, and I feel like that's what this franchise does a good job of, and that's why honestly,
Well, and the fact that you can take any one of those, I'll say the original 4 movies, not so much Lightyear. I mean, it could mean something for that somebody in the future, but the fact that pretty much anybody could latch on to any of these 4 and get something really out of each one, or like connect to something in one of those movies is really special. And the fact that all those movies can do that, I think is really cool.
yeah, and to be honest, like I know it sounds like a cop out, but like I feel like that's why Toy Story is my number one because the foundation that it's set up, like this is honestly the I don't is it maybe it's all right. Toy Story 1 and Rocky 1 are like the two where I will like it's hard to not have them as my number one because of what it builds and how the foundation sets up in the first one because of like everything that we get in 2, 3, 4, and even technically Lightyear to an extent is based on what it sets up in Toy Story 1 because it does a fantastic job of building who these characters are. You get Woody as just the alpha, but also like not like he's his confidence is based on being the guy. So when you get Buzz coming in, because guess what? Andy saw Lightyear and he loved it. But you get Buzz coming in there.
I'm so sure about that. I call bullshit on that, but all right. I think you would
Let's
like
just put it
socks.
this way: the Lightyear reasoning works for me. Like a lot of the excuses I'm willing to accept in the Saw franchise, I'm like, all right, it's definitely after the fact, but it makes sense and I works. Like it works. But anyway,
I just was the hot Christmas toy and he got one, so I don't know about that, but that's all right. I'll roll with it.
if
But
that was
when
the
I go back and
case,
watch the original,
if that
I'm
was the
not.
case, Andy would have had a Turbo Man. But anyway, so Lightyear, it sets up everything.
Don't talk to me about Turbo Man.
Yeah, Turbo
You all
it
the way.
sets up Woody as just the guy. So then when Buzz comes in here and steps on his toes, his confidence is just he's not the alpha because it really showcases that
Mhm.
he doesn't his popularity is based on his character, not his person, and that's why by the end why I connect to 4 so much is just showing how much he's grown and how much he's finally realized that. But so that's why that connects with me there. So that starts off that the Buzz character being the Space Ranger and just like not understanding he is a toy. So then, later in 1 when, he's Miss Nesbit and he has the whole tea party scene and, he's drunk.
I'm Mrs. Nesbit.
And hammered one of that if that's not my favorite subliminal low key adult joke in a kids movie, it's close. You know what I mean? It's one of those where it's like fire. It's hilarious. But so him dealing with that, Woody. So what gets me is you don't have. I know you said you don't have the emotional as much, but when Woody or when Buzz first before that, when he first goes to fly and
Oh, yeah.
like, dude, that fucking that gets you, dude. It sets that up perfectly. Of like, oh my god, like, because think about if you had that revelation of like, I am not me. everything that I thought is a lie. Like, imagine you find out at the age of 21 you're adopted, and now everything that you like in your mind you lived up, you're like, that's all gone. Like, that's how I felt. It's like what this movie was able to do. And then you just build up that relationship, and then you build up all the scary toys of Sid's, and you're like, yo, these aren't scary toys. They've just been fucked up. They're damaged goods, essentially. You know what I mean? That's a good metaphor. And then everything with Sid. I actually love that he's just a pure villain. Essentially, he's essentially the Michael Myers. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need a reason. He's just a shithead. You know what I mean? Because guess what? Kids are sometimes just shitheads. You know what I mean? And he's just tearing up these toys, and you got the rocket, and then I love how the scene, when he puts the match in the pocket. You know what I mean? And just we were able to save that for later, and then and then the very end of just. You are flying, or falling in style. You know what I mean? Just all the payoffs that it does a good job. You said it didn't quite know what it had, but I really do think it did. But like, it's one of those where it's like in retrospect, you think that it set the foundation up and it pays it off later. But I really feel like if this was a pure one-off, it holds up. And granted, like when I looked at, like I always do, I look at my reviews just to see just like the longevity of like my thoughts of these movies. I literally said, I'm like, honestly, at this point, Toy Story 1 low-key feels like kind of underrated because of just like people want to nitpick, like, oh, it doesn't have, the Jesse scene like in 2, doesn't have the Lotso scene, or the going away in 3. It doesn't have the Woody send-off in 4, you know what I mean? But it's like it's getting to a point so people are like, yeah, it's great for the time, or it's great for what it started, or the nostalgia. But I really feel like when you go and watch this, like, sure, the animation, if we're just nitpicking everything outside of the animation, then it kind of like feels a little off, like kind of like a 3D movie without the glasses every once in a while. I'll admit that. But it's like, if that's really my only nitpick at that, I would rather have a technical nitpick than a storyline, plot based, actor stuff like all day long, because I'm willing to handle that, because the technical stuff isn't like jarring. It's not like watching 1933's King Kong and expect, today's stuff. You know what I mean? It's not that shocking. It's not that far off. You know what I mean? If you're not accepting that, then it's weird. You know what I mean? So like it just works for me because it's hilarious. It's fun. Obviously, it's quick pace, 84 minutes or whatever. You know what I mean? It's one of those, it's just like boom, in and out. It sets up everything at Pizza Planet. It does a great job of just that concept. And then, the Woody's needs to get back to Andy, like that, he wants to be, right there. And then just the revelation, everything with Buzz, the building of that friendship, everyone, the toys thinking that like he's turned on him, and then he does the thing where he grabs his arm and he's like waving, he's like, oh, look at Buzz, fine. And then he's like, yeah, and he moves it, and they're like, oh no. Just
handshake.
yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so much fun. And like the fact that you're able to have all this humor that's character-based humor in the first movie, because think about if that exact scene was in like 2 and 3, you're like, oh yeah, of course, that's Woody being Woody being Woody, you know what I mean? But in this first one, in an 84-minute that you're already like Woody being Woody, you know what I mean? It set it up so quickly. So it's like I said, Toy Story 1 and Rocky 1 are the only ones of a franchise where you're like, yo, I love this franchise because of this first one. It's like, sure, maybe the other one might be more. And honestly, I feel like this is the most rewatchable because it's like it doesn't hit you in the gut. You know what I mean? I could just watch it and have fun, but still have that Buzz moment. You know what I mean? Because you kind of forget. Like, I feel like that Buzz moment is underrated because you think.
Well, and to me, it's not so much even the actual the flight he does, the attempted one. It's when he hears the commercial in the other room and he looks at it. Thing is just like he's watching this commercial and he's going like, what the fuck? Like, it's just like, what the hell moment of like, that's me. Yeah. And then it has the little disclaimer, you see it all at the end of it where it's just like, not a flying toy, just so bluntly. And he's just like he's still like in denial even up till that moment where he climbs up like the the top of the stairs or whatever. So like, or set that first realization, that like maybe there is something beyond like my own understanding or whatever, and then because and even that thing where he lands and he sees like his arm and he goes back into his like standard pose, just like a giving up type thing, he's just done at that point, and like Woody has to snap him out of it. Like, all that stuff's great. Like, again, I don't have much nitpicking to say about the original one either. I just watched the other two more at this stage of my life. But I mean, I'd watched this thing a million times growing up, so like I don't have any like ill will at all towards the original. It's still a 5-star, amazing, incredible film, that does a great job of setting up this world very efficiently and all these characters very efficiently. You understand each one of their characters pretty much right out of the box. And every sequence is a lot of fun. Even just the sequence with the army men like running around spying.
If that's him that logged out. Oh, there you go. He's back because it's one of those.
Fun.
His internet does a thing where every once in a while. So, are you back? All right, he's not back. So yeah. I get everything he's saying about that. Where it's like it once again, like I feel like it's underrated at this point because you just kind of miss that scenes like that happen, and it definitely like I said, when you think of this franchise, like I said, the first thing you think of, I said just I'm kind of
With
panning.
Lightyear.
He's not getting anything right now. He does not even know. But yeah, in 2, you close your eyes, you think of the Justice scene. In 3, maybe there's like 3 I'll give you. You close your eyes, you think of the Lotso scene, you think of the incinerator, and you think of the send off. In 4, I feel like at this point people are like it's so unnecessary. But if you close your eyes, you get the send off, maybe even the Gabby Gabby scene if you're like me. And then in Lightyear, I feel like honestly, like what he talked about earlier, the montage, I feel like that's one that people are going to talk about, and honestly, just the fun action. You know what I mean? Because I feel like a lot of people didn't connect to the Izzy character and the great grandma, which Angela, no, I forgot. I'm only saying it the one time because of theaters, but yeah. So with that said, I feel like that's essentially why. But yeah, so he's having the connection problem. So I'm doing the math of how we're gonna do the rankings. Right now he's finally gone. There we go. But yeah. So with that said, um, I'm trying to do both at once. Usually I do these when he's talking, so it makes it easier. But yeah. So I'm gonna give him a second to come back in. He's back. I'll let him finish his statement as I finish the math for the rankings.
They're
I
halfway on
I tried to riff as best I could without being
I know.
awkward, but it was one of those panics. But I
Yeah.
kind of already did the rundown, so you can just continue. Everyone knows
No,
at this
it's
point what
fine.
happened.
I mean, again, I don't have much bad to say about the original movie, like at all. Like I have like nothing bad to say other than, when you go backwards through the series, there's just the technical stuff. But again, I can get over that. That's not a big deal. But yeah, everything still clicks with the original one. Yeah, a phenomenal job of setting up everything. Right out of the get go, all the action sequences are good. All the comedy, works. All the different dynamics between Ham and Rex, and it's just like leaving little things that make me laugh, like when Potato Head's like walking by the dude, and he's just like, "What do you look like? Are you a hockey puck?" And he's just a hockey puck, and he just shrugs his shoulders. Like it's just a funny joke of just it's such like a Don Rickles thing. Just those little things make me laugh and are a lot of fun, and just the structure and the way that Woody kind of runs everything. He's not like an asshole, but he's definitely the
Structured.
leader, and he has jealousy issues. He has attention and jealousy issues. When he doesn't get it. So, and it's the things he has to get over. Later in the series, not being the main guy. Even at the fourth one, when he gets relegated to the closet with Mel Brooks and Carol Burnett and Carl Reiner in their little quick cameos, where they're just like, oh, look, you got your first little dust bunny. Isn't that cute? All that kind of stuff. Like, he has to learn that he's not always going to be the center of attention. And yeah, no, I like their character arcs in this one. They're a lot of fun. Buzz is always fun when he thinks he's real. All that stuff's great. Where's that bonding strip? All that stuff. Like
Oh yeah,
just little moments.
it's like what are
Just take
you
weeks to prepare. Just yeah, he's convinced he's still gonna go off in space in a
Or even
ship.
even when he actually does the showing off of like, oh, I can fly, and he
Oh
just
yeah,
locks into it, and it's just like, but there's so much swagger to it that you're just like,
oh, yeah.
fuck, maybe he can fly. You know what I mean?
Can
You buy it.
yeah. Oh, it's like yeah, no, I get it. I guess I buy it. Maybe he can fly. Yeah, all that stuff is great. Yeah, his dynamic with Woody is just one of the best. To ever set up in any movie. They're back and forth. So I mean, that classic scene of you are a toy. You're a plaything, and he's just like you're a sad, strange little man. Like all that stuff is great. Um, wonderful chemistry between the two. So yeah, I have nothing bad to say about the original one. It's just the one yeah, the other two one kicked me in the feels a little bit more. That's all
Yeah,
it is. So
and I
that's a cool
definitely
thing.
I definitely respect that. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's Toy Story ranking right there. So
Mhm.
the easy math that I was kind of riffing when I was talking about that. I was
Uh-huh.
trying to do the math and like still
Yeah.
talk, so it's not an awkward silence, but also explain what's
It's all good.
happening, but still like lift.
Mhm.
It was weird, but
I'm
we made it
sorry.
work.
The dangers of us doing this live late at night is my and AT&T decides to walk out between like 11:30 and 1 a.m. every night. I don't know why,
That's
but they just
hilarious.
decide to.
But
So I
so yeah, so here's our Toy Story ranking as a collective show. At number 5, Lightyear.
like,
At number 4, Toy Story 4.
mm,
At number 3, Toy Story 2. At
mm,
number 2, sorry, Pez, I brought it down a little bit. Toy Story 3, and at number 1, the OG, the classic Let's Rank stuff, the original, the
Yeah,
one, Toy
the
Story
cliche,
1.
Pulp Fiction, Toy Story, Rocky. No, it's all good. No, I'm perfectly
Yeah.
fine with that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's
the
one of those
original.
ones. Honestly, this is really the one that I'm curious about in terms of the comments, like what the number one is. Like, I feel like this will be like this is a franchise that you could like if you Family Feuded this and you said, "Hey, what is the number one Toy Story movie?" I swear to God,
Yeah.
the split is going to be wild. I mean, obviously of the
Oh,
first three.
I'll say this. I almost had Toy Story 2 as my number one. Very, very close. Like on any given day, I feel like 2 could even overtake 3 because it has just as many of those moments and those great drama pieces as 3. So like they're neck and neck depending on what they go. Just when I watched them, God damn, did 3 just devastate me all
Yeah,
over again. So it just works, on that level. But yeah, but
yeah,
it was close. I almost went with 2.
I
So
definitely
very, very
respect that. So, yeah, this was a lot of fun. It actually, once that's the good thing about the new releases that a movie like this comes out, and obviously, Toy Story would be on the docket at some point because it's a franchise. But like, I
sure.
think originally we were going to do Toy Story versus How to Train Your Dragon, and then we just randomly like, oh yeah, Lightyear comes out. It was 5 movies. Let's talk about it. And we still got an hour in of talk about the Toy Story franchise, and I had a blast with
We
this. So
still do a crossover with Dragon versus something, Kung Fu Panda or something. We can always do something else.
I mean, yeah,
Like
there's
a
DreamWorks, so you might as well at that point. I mean, so
yeah.
it doesn't matter. But we'll have some fun with that. But yeah, did we have next week?
I've got the next couple of weeks if you want me to
Okay, go
run it
ahead.
down.
I
Yeah,
forgot. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So next week we'll get back to an actual filmography. So we'll be doing a little Matthew Vaughn,
That's
who
what it
has
was.
quite the eclectic filmography. Stuff like early stuff like Layer Cake, and then obviously has bigger franchise things he contributed to with Kick Ass and X Men First Class and the Kingsman movies, all that stuff. So we'll be talking about that. Nice little mix of movies to give me a reason to watch Kingsman, which I still haven't watched yet, but I'm gonna
And I still
probably
haven't
just
watched
rewatch.
Stardust, so that's finally my reason to finally watch that. So both
Stardust.
of us.
My ex watched Stardust a lot, so I've seen Stardust a lot. But yeah, so she did. But I'm probably just going to rewatch the whole Kingsman trilogy just to lead up to it
Oh
and
fucking A.
watch all through. So because yeah, that'll be fun. And then the week after, we'll be doing another filmography since we've been kind of heavy on the franchise stuff lately. But it ties into Thor: Love and Thunder. We'll be talking instead of just talking the Thor movies or some other MCU related thing. Like we'll talk about the new one and Ragnarok when we talk about Taika Waititi, who also has a pretty eclectic, filmography stuff like Hunt for the Wilder People and Jojo Rabbit and What We Do in the Shadows and some of his earlier stuff, like a lot of different movies in there. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about my immense love for Thor Ragnarok when we get there. Anybody who knows me knows.
Loud noises.
So, yeah. And the thing is I'm gonna have to freaking rewatch it again. I just know I will. Like I don't want to, but I will. Like for this thing, and I'll just be as salty as ever. We'll see.
I'm
But
gonna
yeah,
I'm gonna laugh if when you watch you're like, man, I really was just in a bad mood the first 22 times I watched
I
it.
know
This is the one
it,
time it finally clicked.
it'll be funny if I hate Ragnarok and then I go watch Love and Thunder. I'm like, Love and Thunder was amazing.
Well,
Like it was,
based on the trailers, there's a few scenes where there's not as much color, so you might not have a headache for a little bit of the
I,
movie. So.
yeah, I know. I'm gonna get a migraine like an old man, like I always do. It doesn't help that they're using "Sweet Child of Mine" in the trailers, which I hate Guns N' Roses. So that does not
That's a
help.
take.
Yeah.
What's after take you?
And then it'll all build up. We'll do one more big on the 13th. We'll do a big crossover franchise thing like we did with Alien versus Predator. This time it's Terminator, RoboCop. So
Dead or
yeah,
alive, you're ranking with me. Boom.
that's damn son. There you go, putting the button on it. Yeah, Terminator versus RoboCop. So that's a big 10 movie ranking that I'm looking forward to. That's gonna be a lot of fun. So a big crossover. And who knows, man? Like I love those early Terminators, but you throw RoboCop in there, like the original, and who knows where that ranks in there? Because I love that movie too, like to pieces. So
Can you
who knows?
fly? Can you
Yeah.
fly,
So
Bobby?
good stuff, man. We'll get into some 80s squibs and some ultra violence and some, evil corporations and stop motion animation, all kinds of good stuff
Yep,
with those three. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, but that'll be a lot of fun. So, that's going to be the big one we're kind of building up to right now. So, yeah.
absolutely. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm excited for the next 3 weeks. But yeah, if you made it this far in the video, and you liked it, go ahead and please comment below your overall rankings, but specifically your number one, because I'm really intrigued to see the differences of people's number
I've
one.
seen, some of the younger folks, they have like that Toy Story 4 at number one, and like I'm not there yet, but I get it, like, and you talking about it like helped me, kind of see some of that. I've seen a lot of people like that one's almost underrated at this point, Toy Story 4 is, and yeah, if you're down with the OG stuff, or if you're in that age range that I am and you grew up with these movies, maybe three's number one. I've seen all kinds of different reasons for the different ones.
And
That's the
I've
cool
been
thing
in
about
this
the
community
series.
for a long time where it's gotten to a
Yeah.
point where the debate is 2 or 3 based on just the
Mhm.
commonality of
Yeah.
Stinky Pete and Lotso, and that's just a debate that happened. Like a lot of people, like if you look on Letterboxd, which you don't have, but a lot of people, if you look on Letterboxd, some people have Toy Story 3 as like a 2-star movie or a 1-star movie just because
Wow.
they think it's repetitive. And I swear to God, like it's gotten to a point where if you ask people, Toy Story 3 is overrated. You know what I mean? Like people go, wow,
Yeah.
but also people still love it, obviously. So it's a great conversation to have in the comments. So go ahead and comment below.
Hmm.
And if you're new because you just clicked on the Toy Story franchise ranked and you enjoyed this show and you enjoy us as a people, we'll be here every Wednesday. Make sure you put on the post notifications because we don't have a set time. Different work schedules, different life stuff. I run a trivia league, which obviously you want to subscribe for that too. But so we never have a set time. So you want to hit that bell so you know exactly when we're going to go in. So you don't want to pop in at the 40-minute mark and you're like, oh shoot, number 2, what did I miss? So you don't want to ever be behind. And then obviously, like I mentioned earlier, I have a horror podcast with John Marr on Mondays that just on a hiatus just because I've been studying for trivia, selfishly speaking. And then we also have the aforementioned trivia. There will be trivia both singles and teams that we're filming and getting up there with that. So with that said, my name is Henry Confidential. Make sure you check out everything that Austin's doing over the Movie Hero Network.
Hmm.
Tier ranker fights, tournament fights, podcasts about movies, and just
Yeah.
having a lot of fun over there. So yeah, with that said, my name is Henry Confidential. That is Austin Pez Howell. This is where we show up every Wednesday to rank stuff. Bye, guys. You are not